I want to start by saying that my wife and I are not superstitious people. We are both in our mid-30s. I work in logistics. She is a physical therapist. We are practical, grounded people who believe in evidence and explanation. I say that because everything I am about to tell you happened to us, and we still don't have a complete explanation for all of it. And that is the part that keeps me up at night more than anything else. We bought our house in the spring of 2021. It was a 1940s colonial in a quiet suburb, about 30 minutes outside of the city. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a big backyard. It needed some cosmetic work, but the inspection came back clean. Good bones, the inspector said. Solid structure. Nothing to worry about. We moved in that June. My wife Sarah and I and our dog Biscuit, a 5-year-old beagle who had lived in apartments his entire life and immediately fell in love with having a yard. The first few months were exactly what we had hoped for. We painted, we replaced flooring in the kitchen, we got to know our neighbors, normal new homeowner stuff. We were happy. The first thing I noticed was Biscuit. About 4 months after we moved in, he started behaving strangely. Not constantly, just at certain times. He would be completely normal all day, and then suddenly, usually in the evening, he would stop whatever he was doing and stare at the ceiling. Not any ceiling, specifically the ceiling in the upstairs hallway. Directly below the attic access hatch, he would stand there completely still with his ears up and just stare. Sometimes for 30 seconds, sometimes for several minutes. Then he would go back to whatever he was doing like nothing had happened. I told Sarah about it and she said it was probably squirrels in the attic. We'd had a lot of squirrels in the yard that fall, and it was a reasonable explanation. I went up and checked the attic, pulled down the hatch, climbed up with a flashlight, looked around. Standard attic. Insulation, some old boxes the previous owners had left, exposed rafters. No squirrels, no droppings, no signs of any animal. I chalked it up to Biscuit being weird and forgot about it. 3 weeks later, I woke up at 2 in the morning to a sound I couldn't immediately identify. It was rhythmic and faint, coming from above me. Our bedroom was directly below the attic on the 2nd floor. I lay there in the dark listening. It sounded like something shifting, like weight moving slowly across a surface. I told myself it was the house settling. Old houses make sounds. Everyone says that, and I went back to sleep. But it happened again the following week, and the week after that, always at night. Always the same slow rhythmic shifting sound from above the bedroom. Sarah heard it too by the 3rd time. We both lay there in the dark listening to it. She said it sounds like someone walking very slowly. I said she was being dramatic, but I knew she wasn't wrong. That is exactly what it sounded like. I went back up to the attic the next morning. This time I was more thorough. I walked the entire space, checked every corner, looked for gaps or holes where an animal could have gotten in. I found nothing. No entry points, no droppings, no nesting material, no signs of life of any kind. The attic was as empty and undisturbed as it had been the first time I checked. I hired a pest control company. They came out, inspected the attic and found nothing. The technician said it was one of the cleanest attics he had seen in a house that old. He said whatever we were hearing was probably the house expanding and contracting with the temperature changes. He charged us $200 for that information. The sounds continued. Over the following months, I became almost used to them. They were unsettling but not constant, and after a while you adapt to almost anything. Biscuit kept staring at the hallway ceiling. We kept hearing the sounds. Life went on. It was about 8 months after we moved in that things changed. Sarah came home from work one afternoon and asked me if I had been in the attic. I said no, I hadn't been up there in months. She said she had gone up to get a box of winter clothes we had stored up there, and something was wrong. I asked her what she meant. She said come and look. I followed her upstairs and she pulled down the attic hatch and we both climbed up. She led me to the far corner of the attic, past the boxes, to the space behind the water heater where there was a low area between 2 sloped sections of roof. I crouched down and looked. The insulation in that corner had been flattened. Not disturbed, flattened, like something had been lying on it repeatedly over a long period of time. The area was roughly the size of a large dog, maybe 5 feet long and 2 feet wide. In the center of the flattened area, there was a depression that was clearly shaped by something that had been resting there consistently. Around the edges of the flattened insulation there were marks in the old plywood subfloor. Scratches, long thin scratches that ran parallel to each other. The kind you would see if something with nails or claws had been resting there and shifting its weight over time. Neither of us said anything for a while. The scratches were not fresh. They had dust in them, which meant they had been there long enough for dust to accumulate. We had been in this house for 8 months. Whatever made those scratches had been in this attic for at least that long. Possibly longer. Possibly before we moved in. Sarah was the one who said what we were both thinking. She said something has been sleeping up here. We called the pest control company back. They sent a different technician this time, a senior inspector. He looked at the flattened area, looked at the scratches, and could not identify what had made them. He said the size was too large for a raccoon or a possum. He said a coyote was possible, but the scratches were inconsistent with coyote claws. He said he honestly did not know what to make of it. He set up cameras in the attic, 3 of them, and told us to call when they had recorded something. 3 weeks went by. The cameras recorded nothing. Not a single motion trigger, not a single frame of footage with anything in it. But the sounds continued, and when we went back up to check the area in the corner, the insulation had been compressed further. Whatever was creating that depression was still doing it, but it was not appearing on camera. That was when I started to feel genuinely scared. Not spooked, not unsettled, scared. The cameras were motion activated and covered the entire attic space. If something physical was up there, it would have triggered them. The only explanations I could come up with were things I did not want to think about. We brought in a second pest control company. Same result. We had a structural engineer look at the house to rule out any settling or movement that could explain the sounds. He found nothing. We had an electrician check the wiring in case there was some mechanical explanation for what we were hearing. Nothing. 14 months after we moved in, we set up our own cameras. Better ones than the pest control company had used. High resolution, night vision, motion activated, with a secondary setting that recorded continuously at low frame rate regardless of motion. I put 4 of them in the attic, positioned to cover every corner including the area behind the water heater. For 6 weeks the cameras recorded nothing unusual. The continuous low frame rate footage was hours of an empty attic. And then one night in the 7th week, something appeared on the continuous footage. I want to be precise about this because I have thought about it every day since. The footage showed the attic at 3:17 in the morning. For the preceding hours the attic had been empty and still. At 3:17, in the corner behind the water heater, the insulation in the flattened area compressed slightly, like something had just settled its weight onto it. There was nothing visible causing the compression. No animal, no person, no object. Just the insulation pressing down as if under a weight that the camera could not see. It stayed compressed for 2 hours and 40 minutes. At 5:58 in the morning it slowly returned to its previous position, like whatever had been resting there had gotten up and left. The motion-activated cameras never triggered. Whatever was in that corner produced no motion that the sensors could detect. While it was there, it only appeared on the continuous footage as an invisible depression in the insulation. I showed the footage to 3 separate people I trusted. A close friend, my brother, and Sarah's father, who was an engineer. All 3 of them watched it and did not know what to say. My brother said there had to be a technical explanation, some artifact of the recording or a compression in the footage itself. He took the file and analyzed it and came back 2 weeks later and said he could not find a technical explanation for what was shown. We sold the house 14 months ago. We live in an apartment now. Biscuit has not stared at a ceiling since we left. I have gone back and forth on what to make of what happened in that house. I have tried every rational explanation and none of them account for all of it together. An animal that left impressions but never appeared on camera. Sounds that continued for 2 years but had no identifiable source. Footage of a visible effect with no visible cause. The people who bought our house are a young couple. They have a dog. I think about them sometimes. I never told them about the attic. I know that was wrong. I just didn't know how to explain it in a way that anyone who hadn't been there would believe. I'm not sure I would have believed it myself. I still have the footage. I have watched it more times than I can count. The insulation pressing down and then slowly rising back up. 2 hours and 40 minutes of something, resting in a corner of my attic that I could not see. I don't know what was up there. I don't know if it's still there now. I just know that whatever it was, it had been there long before we arrived. And based on everything I saw, I believe it is still there now. In that corner behind the water heater, waiting for whoever comes next. If you just bought an old house, check your attic. And I mean really check it. Get all the way to the back, behind whatever is stored up there, and look at the insulation in the corners. You might find something you weren't expecting, or you might find nothing, and that might be worse.